Well, we're midway through the 2023 legislative session. While proposals have died, some others are getting legs, and now parties are on to budget debates, amendments, and much more. We're checking in with Senate Majority Leader Bob Duff. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Emma.
Of course. So as we're saying, a little over halfway through the legislative session, let's check in. How do you feel it's going so far?
I think the legislative session is going really well so far. We have a budget. It's been voted out of Appropriations Committee on a bipartisan basis. The governor has said some good things about our legislative budget as we enter into negotiations. Our committees have done their work. We continue to work on a bipartisan basis. I think the Democrats continue to lead on a number of important issues. And, we're right now into the sprint until June 6th. So, while, things have a tendency to seem like they're crawling along while committees are doing their work and a number of important bills are out there. But now it's time to get on the floor of the House and Senate and pass some of the bills that came out of committee that are very important to the people of the state of Connecticut.
Absolutely. And I want to get back into the budget. But first, you said some of those priorities. What are the highlights or most important measures you feel have advanced so far?
Well, I certainly think that obviously our budget, that's our top priority. It's the reason why we're here, and it reflects a lot of our values, and we'll get into that in a minute. But a number of other issues, we're talking about education, education reform, making sure that we get information from our local school districts about all the money that we do send to our local districts. Healthcare is obviously a very important issue for people across the state of Connecticut in a number of different ways. We're talking about data privacy for folks, especially for children's protection and teens and others, to make sure that we are protecting them as best we can. I have a bill about making sure our folks who were involved in January 6th down at the U.S. Capitol, who are insurrectionists, if they're convicted, they're not able to run for office anymore. So there's, a lot of different things that are out there. But, we'll advance probably about 300 bills or so this session between the House and Senate. That'll go for the governor's signature. Some are mundane, others are a little more controversial, and we'll have a budget on time as well. So I think that we're doing well.
So some of those priorities that you mentioned, education, childcare, healthcare. I know there's been a topic this session about prescription drug affordability. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Right, absolutely. And that, you talk about healthcare, and it's so siloed in so many different ways, whether people's health insurance, prescription drugs, hospitals, insurance companies. What we're looking to do is make sure that prescription drugs are as affordable as possible. There's a multi-state effort to have prescription cards to lower those prices for consumers across the state of Connecticut. So you want to help families. You want to help reduce those costs. We have done a number of things over the last few years on a bipartisan basis, led by our Senate President, Senator Looney, on a lot of these issues. And we'll continue to make sure that we're doing everything we can to fight health care increases while providing still good quality health care as well. You look at other states, they have much worse outcomes. Connecticut has good outcomes because we're on top of some of these healthcare reforms. We're also working very hard to make sure that we keep those costs down at the same time.
And the governor's set a priority for him is childcare access. What's been done this session in that regard?
Well, some of this takes money, so that's going to be part of the overall budget, obviously. I think Connecticut did very well during the pandemic with keeping our early childhood centers open. Some did close. We want to make sure there's more opportunities for slots for early childhood, and that kids have those safe places, good places where they can learn in preschool, because we know that if kids are prepared for kindergarten, their success during their school career is going to be much better. So we want to make sure we have those slots, especially in our urban areas where the availability of those slots are less, and where kids struggle a little bit when they first enter kindergarten. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure kids are ready to go when they get into kindergarten.
Absolutely. And you said take some money. All of these things in some capacity take money. So let's talk about it. We have this historic budget surplus in this session. Everyone's trying to get a little piece of it, trying to put that money towards different things. So first off, what are the priorities for that money? I know the budget just came out this past week, but to kind of sum up, how do you think the state should be spending that?
Well, there's a number of different ways. Obviously, we want to still continue to make the proper investments, and that's why we're always going to fund education, We're funding higher education, early childhood education. We want to make sure we're always still investing in our infrastructure like transportation, especially with the money that we're going to be getting from Washington, but we still have to put up our state's share as well. Reducing healthcare costs is very important for us in the budget, helping arts and culture and tourism because those are job creators as well. So we want to make sure that we're making those investments. But on the other side of it is historic tax cuts that the governor proposed. We have in our finance piece of the budget, the legislative budget as well, which are really the first major tax cuts, income tax cuts in a very long time. I think people are going to be excited about that. And so we're using the surplus very wisely. We've been paying down our pension debt. We have a full rainy day fund. We're seeing our Wall Street ratings increase, which lowers the cost of borrowing. And we're also giving back some of that money to the taxpayers of the state of Connecticut.
You've already talked a couple times about bipartisanship, and especially this session. Do you think there are any of these priorities that line up with what Republicans wanted? I know after we saw the governor's budget proposal in February, I talked to some of the Senate Republican leaders who said, we really agree with some of these priorities. How are you feeling from the legislative standpoint? Do you feel like these priorities for the budget have bipartisan support?
Well, the Appropriations Committee budget that just passed on a bipartisan basis. Our budget last year in the full House and Senate passed on a bipartisan basis. Democrats have led on these issues because we're writing the budget. Republicans are voting for them at the same time, so they're agreeing with it. They haven't presented their own budget in a number of years, but they understand the investments we're making, and they understand that they're important for their constituents as well. That's why they're voting for the budgets that we're writing, because they understand that these are good long-term investments we're making for the people of the state.
Right, and when it comes to the governor's budget proposal, he said this week that the budget that came out of appropriations was similar priorities, but there were some different spots there. As you said, healthcare, education, the legislature's budget puts a little bit more money, spends a little bit more than the governor's proposal. Any comment on how that aligns with what was coming out of his administration's office?
Well, that's why we have negotiations, and I think right now we're really close to being together, and we'll get there probably pretty soon. But you know, the governor's one person. We have 187 legislators, so there's a number of different competing interests, obviously, and so that's what part of the negotiations are for. But don't forget, it's a 2-year budget, so we're passing something for 2 years, and that sets us on a path, which I believe is a good one. So we'll get there. We're not far apart, and I'm optimistic that people of the state will see tax cuts. They'll see more investments in areas that they believe are important, such as municipal aid, education funding, higher education, early childhood education, and healthcare.
And anything left on the table there? I know we obviously have these fiscal guardrails to keep having this budget surplus. They were just renewed this session, and the governor really reiterating those. Again, the legislature's budget spending a little bit more, but saying it's still within the cap. But I know some people were really hoping to put more money towards certain programs or certain priorities. How are you feeling there?
Well, you know, there's always more requests than there is money to spend, but I think the legislature has, since our bipartisan budget that we passed in 2017, and a lot of those initiatives that have led to those budget surplus were Democratic initiatives, such as the volatility cap and other types of provisions that we put into the budget. So those are things that have helped get us to this point, as you said, and I think those are important to make sure that we maintain that. I think the people of the state of Connecticut want responsible and discipline in our budgeting process, good long-term prospects for good fiscal stability and fiscal responsibility. So I'm proud of the fact that we have a full rainy day fund. I'm proud of the fact that we're paying down that pension debt that really is from the 1930s, 1940s. We're paid down right now, actuarially. We've been very current for the last 12 years. We're paying down pension debt for the last 50, 60, 70 years, but we're making real progress. And that's actually given us another $400 to $500 million per year in our operating to be able to spend on the things that people want us to spend that money on.
And quickly, looking ahead, I know you said we'll get there. Negotiations are going to start now. You have until the beginning of June to get this done. For people who don't know or who are watching this, you know, this is their tax dollars being spent. What happens from here? What are we going to see from here on out?
Well, what you'll see is the governor's representatives and our chairs of the Appropriation and Finance Committees coming together to hash out some of the differences. Legislative leaders will come in and the governor will come in at some point at the end to work together on these issues. And that's why I think you'll see an agreement fairly soon. It may take a few weeks or so. The appropriation chairs, our finance chairs are kind of tired right now. They've been working really hard. They've been burning the midnight oil for a few weeks now. So want to give them a little bit of a chance to catch their breath, and then they'll be right back at it. And then by June 6th at midnight, our legislative session is over for the year. And then at that point, we'll have a 2-year budget. And feeling confident you're not too far off? You think it's going to be fairly easy to bring it together? Well, any negotiation always has its ups and downs, right? There'll be a little give and take for everybody, but I think on balance, I'm fairly confident we'll get it done quickly. Right. Well, excited to see and watch that process happen. Well, we're looking at this legislative session, and as you said, it's not too far off now from June, but ahead of the 2024 campaigns and elections, we're only in 2023, but it's definitely on the horizon here. What would you say right now defines Connecticut's Democratic Party? Well, what I think defines Connecticut's Democratic Party is the fact that we're welcoming, we're not excluding people like you see in other states with some of the Republicans. I mean, we're not expelling members like they're doing down in Tennessee. We're not proposing 6-week bans on abortion like they're doing in Florida and Texas. We're not loosening gun regulations. In fact, we're making our gun regulations stronger. Connecticut is one of the safest states in the nation because of our strong gun laws. Connecticut has great results and indices from a standpoint of our social indices for healthcare, for women's healthcare, for child healthcare. All those things are important because we make the right investments. We are progressive, we're pragmatic, we're moving forward, we are taking care of our people. We're not using transgender people as a tool for hatred, a tool to fundraise or excite a base. We're trying to bring equality in the state of Connecticut. We're trying to fund equity so that people in our cities have just as much opportunity as people in our suburbs. We need to make sure that we are focusing on housing for our teachers, our firefighters, our police officers, those who work in our downtowns. So that's very important for us as well. So all these kinds of things, I think the Democratic Party, we're the party that is working to save our democracy. We're working to invest in our people. We're the folks who are looking for equality and equity. That's what I believe the Connecticut Democrats are doing right now, and that we're proving that each and every day by the legislation that we're advancing in the Connecticut Senate and the Connecticut House. Yep, and looking forward to see that get to the floors and see what happens there. It's going to be an exciting end of the session.